Good morning and welcome to the Football Digest weekly podcast. Thanks so much for joining. And as usual, there's so much to talk about after a busy week so far of Champions League action, contrasting fortunes with English clubs, of course. Europa League action to look forward to tonight and the FA Cup semi-finals to look forward to back at Wembley. And I'm delighted to say joining me this week is Jeremy Cross, Chief Sports Writer of the Daily Star, Chris McKenna of the Daily Star, and Matt Dunn back in his wonderful office with all the Rothmans on display from the Daily Express. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it. Now, listen, we should actually, as we start the show, let's just perhaps take a moment to reflect, because it is the anniversary of Hillsborough, of course, this week, and there's been so many messages posted on social media, and when we talk about fans and the importance of fans in the past year or so, we should never ever forget the 96 that went to a football match and never came home. So due respect there, and sending every wish really to the families and everyone connected, really. But look, from that somber note, we are going to start also at Anfield, looking back upon Liverpool Real Madrid last night. It was bizarre, really. I sort of had the luxurious position of having two games running at the same time, one on my TV and one on my iPad. And the natural instinct, I think, was to put Liverpool on the big screen, thinking that, there wouldn't be any chance of an upset with their Man City. So the more likely story would be at Real Madrid. But Chris, you were there, and I have to say the story never really completely unfolded, did it, as we might have expected? It didn't really look as if Liverpool were going to turn that round, did it? From the moment Mo Salah missed that early chance.
Yeah, I think it might have been a different night if Salah takes that in the second minute. I think it was a sense of kind of what if for Liverpool last night, like not just even from the chances they did miss last night, but also from the first leg. The way they played in the first half, the way they pressed Real, they gave them something to think about. Now, obviously, Real's kind of game management came into it in the second half, but Liverpool had maybe played with that kind of intensity early in the first leg, they might not have lost 3-1 and might not have had such a mountain to climb. But I think, the case of what ifs. But in the end, I think obviously the better team over the two legs certainly went through, and it might have been different. Salah scores that, and if it was a full house and the place was rocking last night, maybe Real might have felt a bit more pressure. But as the kind of game went on, they just took not control of it, but they never looked flustered. They never looked panicked, even when Liverpool were kind of camped in the half at times.
Yeah, it was a strange one, really. I did expect more of a battle, really, from Liverpool. Bearing in mind, of course, this might be their only path back into the Champions League next season, if you like, because they are facing an uphill struggle to get back into the Champions League. Jeremy, did you expect them to put a bit more of a fight?
I thought they played quite well last night, to be honest. The damage was done, obviously, in Madrid the week before. They left themselves too much to do. I mean, Chris referenced the fans. Obviously, Anfield, an empty Anfield is, a world away from all those famous nights we've been to. I know me and Chris were at that. I don't know if you were there, John, but that night, famous night when they came back and walloped Barcelona 4-0 to get through to the final. That was an amazing night. I'll never forget that one. And it's just not like that anymore. But, irrespective of whether Anfield's full or not, this Liverpool side to me look like one that's peaked now. They've been an intense team for 2 or 3 years. They've had remarkable success. And you just look at them and think, will they ever get back to that level again? I know City have obviously set the bar very, very high this year. But I don't think they need an overhaul, but they need some serious tweaking in the summer. It needs to get some people out of the door and get some fresh faces in. But just going back to last night, like Chris said, Salah could have had a hat trick. Really, you get an early goal and everything changes the dynamic of the game. But they didn't deserve to go through over two legs and while people talk of comebacks and, Liverpool have obviously reached 2 of the last 3 finals, they've come up short badly this season. So, I think they got what they deserved in the end. And obviously now they're focused on trying to finish in the top 4. They're only 3 points off the top 4. And then I was looking at the fixtures this morning. The last 4 games are against Southampton, West Brom, Burnley and Crystal Palace. So in a normal world, you would say they probably would win all those games, but we just don't know, do you? Because they've been so inconsistent this season. The fall from grace has been remarkable, really, when you look at the big picture. So, yeah, they have a chance, but they're relying on others to do them favours, and that's never a great position to be in.
No, it's not. Matt, I'm sure you watched the game last night. It was there's always a lot of talk about Real Madrid, and particularly this season, they're not the team that they were. And yet, they still get the job done. They're still in the Champions League semi-finals. They're as close to, the top in La Liga as you would wish. It's so tight there, by the way, at the top of La Liga. It's incredibly exciting there in that title race. I don't know. In the grand scheme of things, we're probably not giving Real Madrid that much credit, are we? We're sort of kind of looking at this semi-final and saying, "Oh, it's all about Liverpool not being very good." Well, the reality was they're still up against a very good team, weren't they?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, if this is a bad season for Real Madrid, then count any other club in the world in. But that's because it's part of the institution of Real Madrid. Yeah, that's what they do. It's what Manchester United, when they used to have a slightly off season, used to do, and Liverpool before them back in the 70s and 80s. And they just know once they'd done the damage, in the first leg, they just knew how to see the game through. There were a few minor scares early on, but I'll be honest, I was the same as you with balancing the 2 tellies, and fairly soon into the second half, the old big screen switched over to Manchester City, because it was just clear that Real Madrid had enough nous and enough experience in these situations to get to the line, and it was just it was impressive to watch, even though it wasn't particularly interesting.
Yeah, never.
Crossy, you've got to remember, Real Madrid, they have a remarkable ability to peak at the right time, especially in Europe. I mean, we all know what a fantastic record they've got in Europe. When you look at that team, they comfortably got through Liverpool in 2 legs without the 2 best defenders, Ramos and Varane. So, I don't know if those 2 will be fit for the semi-final against Chelsea, but having those 2 back is going to be a real fillip for them. And, you look at Benzema up front. I mean, what a fine, wonderful striker he's been for Real Madrid over the years. Scored so many goals, had to live in Ronaldo's shadow for all those seasons, and he's still there scoring goals and still a great forward.
Yeah, he is.
Zidane too, I think, deserves a lot of credit, because a lot of when he was winning stuff early on as manager, it was all put down to kind of Ronaldo. Ronaldo's doing this, and Zidane was just kind of some sort of mascot as manager. But he's obviously shown now that he's not really rebuilt the team. He's made tweaks without Ronaldo, but they're still competing at the very top level. So I think his kind of not credentials as a manager have really gone through the roof in the last few years.
Yeah, no, it really has. The other player that sort of kind of catches my eye on the back of last night, but it's been a typical almost of his season, really. Trent Alexander-Arnold, who came in for so much shtick, didn't he? After that first leg game, it was pretty unremarkable sort of game for a lot of players last night, really. But he was the winner, against Villa on Saturday had a lot of people crying again, kind of sort of saying, that will really show Gareth Southgate, who was sat in the stands, really. But I don't know, where are we on Alexander Arnold? I definitely have him in my England Euro squad, by the way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's the complete player. Does he sort of kind of defensively and offensively? Matt, what do you make of Alexander Arnold and where he is right now?
Where he is right now is, I think he's one of the world's greatest right backs. But there's times you just suspect he's probably not quite as good as he thinks he is. It's a really harsh thing to say of a humble lad, but I think he focuses too much on what he can do going forward, and sees that as a big strength to his game, which it rightly is. And perhaps he is too good a footballer to be a right back or a right wing back all his career. But what he's got to do is same as Gareth Bale did. You know, he was a left back for long enough. I don't think he's quite ready to make that transition if that's how he sees his career panning out from left back moving up the pitch yet. I don't, I think he needs to learn his trade a little bit more, and I think that's what Southgate's trying to do to him by leaving him out of that last squad. Why go and watch him again? You know, if your mind's made up. I think Southgate wants an Alexander Arnold with all his ability, with all his talent, with all his attacking potential, but one that's willing to listen, be told to drop back in and do whatever he's needed to do defensively. Because against the very best teams in the world, you don't need a really flair right back. You need somebody to hold the line for 90 minutes and leave the others to perhaps nick a goal. He's a great player to have when you're trying to break teams down that put 6 across the back and you need as much width as you can get. But I think that's the message to him. I think he's. Do you know what? If it's good, and I don't mean it sounded really awful saying that he's a better player than he thinks he is. I think Carl Walker went through something a little bit similar about a year or two ago, and when Southgate dropped him from the squad. And I think now he's come back and he's enjoying playing right back more than he ever has done in his career, because he sees it as a series of one-on-one challenges, and he tries to make something of himself there, and he's kind of learned how to be a right back rather than be a good footballer. And that's what I think Southgate's hoping is going to happen for him anyway, because for whatever reason he's not playing as well for England, or he's never played as well for England as he has done for Liverpool.
The glaring difference, Crossy, between Walker and Alexander Arnold is Walker relishes the defensive side of the game. You know, he's a physical defender. Alexander Arnold looks to me like a defender who feels like tackling someone or stopping an opponent is a bit of a chore. He just goes out there and he wants to express himself in the opposition's half of the pitch, which makes me wonder, well, if you want to do that, why don't you convert yourself into a right winger then and play further forward? Don't be a right back anymore, be a right winger.
Yeah,
I don't think Klopp would ever consider doing that.
He's got a problem at Liverpool to do that with Mo Salah. It's going to be a hard man to displace in that point.
How long is Salah going to be at Liverpool for?
Yeah, well, that's another point.
Alexander Arnold could be at Liverpool his entire career. He's a Liverpudlian and he's still very young. I just think he's going to miss out on the Euros because he's defensively he's not strong enough. He's not a good enough defender at that level. Walker's a better defender, and while Alexander Arnold offers a lot more going forward, Southgate's got so many options in attack. You know, he doesn't need him in that role. But long term, you know, unless he improves his defensive abilities, he needs to think about that.
Yeah. Chris, it felt to me as if Klopp was really hurt by the omission of Alexander Arnold. He brought Messi into the conversation, didn't he? I mean, it was just, you know, I think he sort of really saw it as a sort of a slight. You know, am I reading that wrong? Is Klopp? You know, Klopp encourages his fullbacks to get forward, and he's got 2 of the best attacking fullbacks in the league, hasn't he? And they play to Liverpool's strengths. They are part of the dynamic which made Liverpool the best team in the league and in Europe. So I guess you've got to have some sympathy, haven't you? That basically he's been told to play that way at club level, which isn't necessarily the way that he wants to be played at sort of international level. And maybe, just maybe, that's a fault on Southgate's side. I don't know. You know, how do you see that dynamic?
Yeah, Klopp is obviously it's his boys. It's always that kind of attitude. He will always try and protect them when they're getting criticism. But the thing with Trent Alexander-Arnold and that Liverpool team, if you take the best Liverpool team where everybody fit, he's playing in a defence. Okay, he plays on the side of either Joe Gomez or Joe Matip, but it's still a Van Dijk in that defence who covers a lot of ground. But also, crucially, he usually has Jordan Henderson in front of him, who covers a hell of a lot of ground and offers that protection when the full-backs bomb forward. Now, Henderson, even when he's been fit this season, hasn't played in that kind of role a lot. He's been in the back. He's been in the number 6 role because Fabinho has been at the back. So with that midfield, it's not been the same. So I think Alexander-Arnold's not had the same protection, which has kind of maybe exposed some of those defensive frailties a bit more. So from that sense, and that's where I think the challenge is for England, because they play differently. They don't play that 3-man midfield across that he would have that extra protection there. But I mean, from my view, it's like you can argue if he should start, if he's in Southgate style, but I just can't see how you can have him in the squad. I mean, what an option to have to bring on, or in those, if it's not working in the Euros against this kind of smaller teams and they can't break it down, that you've got a guy who last night created, I think it was 5 chances before the hour mark on his own. How could you not have that creativeness in your squad from right back? If Southgate doesn't think he's defensively sound enough to start, that's his decision. But I just can't see how he's not in the squad. But yeah, Klopp will always come out, and especially a younger player as well. He's not going to let him take a lot of flack. He's going to come out fighting for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would he be in your England team for the Euros, Crossy?
It's really difficult. I personally think that still England are not secure enough. I'm not completely convinced. I don't like a back three, actually. I think it's a bit of an ugly formation at times. And sort of, I think sort of, a 4 it also enables you to be more attacking. But I'm not sure that England has the defenders to kind of play a 4. And if you are playing a 3 with wing backs, Alexander Arnold, absolutely all day long, it starts. It just can't even be. It's not even a conversation in my view. It's just, it's great. Listen, Reece James might turn out to be longer term the better option in terms of absolutely everything, because he is very good going forward. He is very good sort of kind of, tackling, tracking back and that sort of thing. I think there's still an element that is still not great defensively. He could improve in that area, but I think he's got the potential to be the complete package where, Kyle Walker gets in because he can play in the right side of the 3, he can play right back. And, Trippier is having the season of his life in Spain. He's not been quite good so far since the sort of the turn of the year and the ban and the controversy. But honestly, you ask people in Spain, and sort of Atletico Madrid have been top of the table for much of the season. And Trippier, for the first half of that season, he was their best player. And it just doesn't get fed back in a way. And it's just, So
I think Trippier's problem, though, is he's kind of too similar to Walker.
Yeah, probably.
So why would you take both? He's going to have to use both because of the demands on fullbacks. He's going to play 2 players in that position during a tournament. But why not have a Reece James or a Trent Alexander-Arnold as an alternative to Walker? That's the problem with Trippier. I think it's incredibly unlucky because he went out and found some football which Southgate wanted him to do. He's, like you say, been playing at a very high level, but he just doesn't seem to. He seems to have tumbled down the pecking order a little bit, and mainly because Walker, to be fair, has pulled his socks up and looks the part again. But
does Walker start as England's right back?
I think he does in most defences for the reasons you said, that you need a back 4.
Right.
And he's part of our strongest back 4. And because he's played kind of in that inside play, one of the 3 inside players, he's got the football nous to cut in when he sees that Stones has gone wandering around where he shouldn't be or whatever. He's got the ability to pick up the pieces a little bit. And it's going to have to be a collective performance for them to be strong enough to keep the better teams out. And that's why if you're playing against one of the weak teams, it doesn't happen quite so much in the Euros as it does in the World Cup. But if you do play against a weaker team, let's say Scotland, then you could perhaps put Trent Alexander.
Fan those flames, Donny.
Good luck with that.
The other thing, Crossy, that Walker still has and always has had is that precious commodity of blistering pace. He's still a remarkably fast player for his age. He's in his 30s now, and when you watch him, he can get himself or teammates out of a lot of trouble with his pace. He's the fastest player I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's astonishing, isn't he? He's explosive pace. He should be a 400-meter runner, really.
Yeah, he's a great athlete.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. But there you go. Anyway, listen, guys, let's move on to Man City Dortmund and the game going on in the other small screen for 3 of us at least. But it was just it was fascinating, really, because I do think that sort of Jude Bellingham was just regular listeners and viewers will know that I'm in love with Jude Bellingham, and it just thought he was absolutely sensational in that first half, absolutely amazing. Did it all, scored, cleared one, covered every blade of grass, absolutely astonishing. And you just thought, we began to think, couldn't happen here, could it? Because Dortmund were ahead on having scored, they were ahead on away goals, and it was it was heading to disaster. And then City's turnaround was just astonishing. wasn't it? Wasn't it really, Matt? How did you see the game sort of kind of pan out and go, and sort of kind of where are City right now?
Well, I thought earlier it's one of those things. The first thing is if Dortmund had got through, then we'd have all been quick, perhaps, to jump on Guardiola's back and said, "Oh, he's mucked up." I don't think he got much wrong last night. That they scored early as it happened, Dortmund, but it was almost like City had another gear to go into, and the reaction was impressive. De Bruyne led as always, it seemed, and yeah, Bellingham's performance in the early part of that, I think, has booked him a place on that bus, because I think Southgate's forwards thinking enough to believe that, you know, we would quite like to be in Qatar with Bellingham having had a tournament under his belt already, and what an impact he could perhaps make on that. He's not necessarily going to be in part of the first team this summer, but I can't believe he won't travel and be part of it. And that's the kind of performance that shows he's ready. You know, he's ready for it. He's not going to be out of place doing it. He's not just going to be there as a mascot. You know, he's going to have a part to play if need be. And then how wonderful that another young England player should, you know, settle City's nerves with a cracking goal. And, you know, we're talking about Foden and Bellingham in the Champions League rather than, you know, Spanish players and Italian players. City were impressive. I think they're going to be the team. I think, yeah, it's going to be an interesting semi-final, because you've got the pace of Mbappe and whatever is not going to be, that's going to really test City's defence and Stones and everything. But at the same time, I think they're a better team, City, by a level than PSG are, with the exception that they have a couple of exceptional players. I think that'll be a fascinating semi-final, and beginning slowly, it's beginning to look like Guardiola could finally reach that Champions League final and perhaps win it.
Blimey. Yeah, I have to say, City. I mean, De Bruyne was magnificent, wasn't he? I mean, Jeremy, do you see City getting past PSG? It's a hell of a game now, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it would probably be the final. Most people's choice of the final, given the 4 teams that are left in the competition now. So, I watched the highlights of the PSG game, and I've always thought Neymar. I know this might sound crazy, but I always thought he was a bit overrated in terms of, you know, he was always compared with, bracketed with Messi and Ronaldo. I always thought those two were in a league above Neymar. Don't get me wrong, he's a wonderful player, but he was sensational last night. You know, he missed a few chances at the post a couple of times, and his link-up play with Mbappe is lethal. So, you know, it's going to be a classic showdown between City's impenetrable defence and the flair of PSG. But I still think, you know, City have absolute top quality right from back to front. You know, De Bruyne is probably the best player in the world now, I think. No one would argue with that statement. And he's running games, massive games for City. Foden's on fire. You know, this season he's really emerged as a generational talent for England, I think. A really, really exciting player. And the winning these games, I mean, the second half, they dominated Dortmund. Let's be honest. I know they had it was on an edge for an hour maybe, but you know, you always knew City were going to find a way through and break them down. That's what they do to teams. They just have so much possession. They just wear teams down, and then patient. They stayed patient. You know, there's no panic in there. So yeah, City will edge it for me, but it should be an absolutely fantastic 2 games.
Yeah, I do actually know what you mean about Neymar. Neymar left Barcelona to try and step out of Messi shadow, basically, didn't he? I mean, he really did, you know. And it's a weird one, you know, because sometimes you're left frustrated, and you know, it's just I was covering the other game the other night, so I didn't really sort of kind of see it in its full glory, but it's just wow. You know, people were saying that he was just absolutely unbelievable, but he is an interesting one. And of course, it's Pochettino, isn't it? It's Pochettino.
Greatest manager in the world, isn't he? With Andy not here.
Well, absolutely. Well, he is if you live south of the Watford Gap. Of course, you know, he's not only the greatest manager in the world, but the nicest bloke in the world, of course.
He could end up getting sacked this summer if they don't win the league.
Well, it's in Chris. Honestly, it is quite fun, isn't it? Now, because you look at the league table and you think, well, are they going to win the league? Sure, Pochettino will surely win his first trophy as a manager because no one at PSG could possibly fail not to win the league. Not quite sure about that.
Well, Celtic didn't win the Scottish League this year, did they? So,
no.
Strange thing can happen.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
It adds a good dimension to it, though, because obviously Pochettino was in charge of Tottenham, who knocked City out in, help me out here, was it 2019?
2019, yeah.
And I was at that game at the Etihad, how Tottenham got through that. It still baffles me, really. So, yeah, they were very fortunate and they went on to the final. But so that adds a bit of extra spice to it because Guardiola will not want to lose to Pochettino again.
Yeah, that's a great shout, actually. There's a bit of revenge there, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, there was even a little bit of talk about sort of if Guardiola was to go, then would Poch be his natural successor? There we go, building him up again. But it is amazing. And Chris, Man City, where they've found this rhythm, haven't they? I mean, De Bruyne last night, probably didn't see it all its full glory because you were covering Liverpool, but Man City are just in the groove at the moment, and you'd have to say that you'd fancy them to be favourites, wouldn't you, to reach the final?
Be favourites to reach the final and win it. I think this is their chance. I think, as Jeremy said, it's like back to front. They're brilliant all over the pitch. It's probably the best team that Guardiola's built at the club at City. And yeah, if they don't win it this year, it's kind of like, is it ever going to happen kind of thing for them? Because as you say, Barcelona are not the team they were. They're out. PSG have got Neymar, they've got Mbappe, but defensively they're vulnerable. And if they offer up the chances they did to Bayern, if Bayern had Lewandowski, I think it would be a Bayern City semi-final. If they offer those chances to City, I think City could easily stick 2-3 past them. So, and then the final, as I say, Real Madrid, brilliant, and we were hailing them earlier, but they're not the Real Madrid of 3 years ago, maybe. So, yeah, I think this is their chance and to go and do it. And what a team that fit in to win it, because, as you said, it's all over the pitch. They've got quality, and they can leave players like Raheem Sterling on the bench. They can leave players like Foden doesn't play every week, and how good he is. Like he would walk into any other team in the Premier League and a lot of them in Europe, and he can sit out games for City, and City can still win comfortably. De Bruyne can be rested. It's incredible, really, when you think of it. And good players like Gundogan as well doesn't play every week, so it just shows the quality that they have all over the pitch. And I think this is the year for them. The quadruple, it's definitely on. It's very hard to do. It just takes one slip up and it's gone. But the Champions League will be the one that Guardiola wants, and I think this is his year to get it.
There were no match for Leeds last weekend, though, were there?
Well, exactly. Leeds are on another level. Bielsa balled them out. But
do you know what? It's funny when we've been saying all season, sort of Guardiola is the master at sort of kind of integrating players, rotating sort of 5 at a time. Probably went one step too far because it was a completely different team, completely different structure, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I do think that I do think it was City didn't look like City, but equally, how fun was Leeds? I mean, how fun! It's just brilliant, isn't it? If I'm a Leeds fan, I'm thinking, they've come up with no expectation, and they've just entertained the life out of us. I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, not many teams would go down to 10 men at City and be getting pounded like they were and still believe that they can win a game. They did. They just stick them with a sucker punch at the end. It was a remarkable finish. But just going back to City, if he wins 4 trophies this season, which would be obviously historic, where do you go after that? What do you do next season? I mean, you can't win a quadruple every season. So, as remarkable as it would be, it's only going to go back one way from there, isn't it? Then winning 2 trophies. So, if 2 trophies next season, not 3, even if they win 3 trophies next season, it's always going to feel like a bit of a disappointment, remarkable as it sounds to say. So, it's always going to feel like a bit of an anticlimax compared to that famous season when they won 4.
Do you think
City fans will say, let's just win the 4 now and then worry about that after?
Yeah, absolutely. If he won all 4, do you think he'd get manager of the year?
It'd be up there anyway.
It'd be up there with
Moisey.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I bet someone will still say David Moyes. As good as David Moyes has been, it's ridiculous.
That said, if he doesn't win all four, I'd be tempted to go for Moisey.
Moyes or Bielsa,
Yeah, absolutely. One of those two, definitely. Listen, let's have a little look at Chelsea, because I tell you what, Thomas Tuchel, when we talk about managerial jobs, what a job that Thomas Tuchel has done since taking over at the end of January. I mean, it's astonishing, really, isn't it? Really, I mean, obviously, they had that defeat to West Brom a few weeks ago, but apart from that, it's literally been not a bad moment in the game. I mean, it's just. I mean, they were very. It was a poor game the other night. I mean, you really had to. You had to be. You had to be paid to be watching that. Believe me. But Chelsea got the job done. It was professional. They had Porto, a very difficult team to play against. Matt, it wasn't much fun to be watching that, knowing there was a cracker on the other side.
I was going to say it kept tempting to flick across, wasn't it? But it was job done, wasn't it? I quite like Tuchel. I asked him in the press conference beforehand if he was confident he had the character to get through this second leg, and he said, "Well, you wouldn't want to pick a fight with Tony Rudiger, would you?" And you just think for him to drop that in after everything that's gone on, that's supposed to be bad, with the signs that the cracks were appearing, and him to be that much on top of everything, that he's able, to make it, whether it was intentional or not, allusions to it. He just seems to have broken everything down simply for the players, giving them very straightforward objectives, told them what he expects of them, and he's got good enough players to get the job done so far. And with the defence, apart from West Brom, where everything went missing, for 90 minutes, then they don't look like conceding goals. And when you've got that, a bit like Real Madrid, you've always got a chance. And it'll be an interesting semi-final on their half of the draw on that, because I don't think it'll be an open encounter, but as we were discussing before, Real Madrid aren't the team that they have been in the past, and they're going to have a battle on their hands. Because, and I'll tell you the other thing, the only good thing about watching Chelsea on Tuesday night was watching Kante come back flying, and he's a player I love to watch whenever he plays, just because you're just amazed at the ground he covers, where he pops up next. With him, if he's fully fit, then he can do the job of two people, which just turns the whole thing in your advantage. And that'll be an interesting one. I don't think it'll be a particularly thrilling one to watch, but that'll be a proper battle to see who fills up the other half of that final.
Yeah, if you're an appreciator of defensive midfield play, you'll see two probably the finest in the world in that semi-final with Casemiro and Kante. Yes, they're both masters of their craft. Yeah, you just watch those two play and how they do their roles in their respective team. They're wonderful players.
Yeah, Casemiro's really interesting, isn't he? I mean, sort of kind of, he's singled out, over the course of the Liverpool games, really sort of kind of has been such a key, and you can understand why. Kante is interesting because the last couple of seasons, including this, he's missed a fair chunk through injury. And you think, well, is he going to slow down? And then he'll come back and play like he did the other night when allegedly he was half fit. Putting a performance like that, I mean, it's astonishing, absolutely astonishing.
He's managed him well, actually, Tuchel, because I think it didn't start him in the first game against Atletico, and it was like you thought, crikey, you couldn't ever imagine in times gone by that Chelsea would go into a game of such significance without Kante in the team. But clearly, he wasn't right to play, and hopefully, if he can stay fit between now and the end of the season, Chelsea could end up winning one trophy, maybe two.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, that's the point, isn't it, Chris? I think that Chelsea have, I think Frank Lampard did a really good job at Chelsea, as you might have gathered. But
every time I come on here, you put me on the spot about Frank Lampard. I get another question about that.
No, it was more about
play the role of Andy Dunn, Chris.
No, I think it was more about, in fairness to Tuchel, he kind of has come in and sort of just. Where if Chelsea were sort of maybe a tipping point of their season and Lampard had taken them so far, Tuchel's Tuchel's management has managed to kind of, give them another nudge, if you like, because to be in now the Champions League semi-final, I would still make them really, big odds to make the top four. I still fancy them to make the top four, if I'm honest. And in the FA Cup semi-final as well. That's one hell of a season in prospect. A hell of a, finish to the season. The job that he's done has been remarkable, Tuchel, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, and Chelsea could be the ones that stop City's quadruple in both competitions there. Because obviously got the FA Cup this weekend, which we'll talk about, and then the Champions League, if they come past Madrid, which you would definitely think they're capable of. It's not going to be an easy tie, but you think they can come through that. City-Chelsea final, you wouldn't be going into that thinking, oh, this is a guaranteed win for City, is it? Not this Chelsea. If it was Frank Lampard's Chelsea, I think you would. I think Tuchel's it's that kind of experience. I know he's a young manager as well, but it's that experience of elite level management, of game management, that they just seem to be so much better at. And defensively, they just seem more sound. They seem more of a well-drilled team. And he's taken the talents that Lampard had, and he's kind of just added that kind of experience, more kind of tactical nous to it. And it's just a far more rounded team, and a far harder team to break down as well, unless you're West Brom playing against 10 men who they found the key. So just follow that path.
You got to remember, Cross, when he took over Tuchel, we were all right. We were all slightly surprised by the fact that he only got an 18-month deal, and that was highlighted in pieces we wrote about, and the general consensus was that he has to get them in the top four to get a longer deal. He was essentially on trial. That was only in January. Was it January? Yeah.
January, yeah.
And we're now middle of April, and we're talking about, a team that we all think will get in the top four. They could get to the FA Cup final, albeit they've got to get past City. And they've got to the last four of the Champions League. So, it's been a remarkable turnaround. And he's just, when you look at players like Rudiger and Christensen, they weren't even in the team, and they were out of favour with Lampard. And whatever he's done to those two in particular, who knows what the secret is, but they look like revitalised players under Tuchel.
Yeah. Do you know what I found the biggest breath of fresh air? It's just the way that he listen, at the moment, the only the way that you contact with a manager is through his press conferences. And that's as a fan, as a journalist, and it's on Zoom. So it's a bit disconnected. It's a bit, it's not natural, is it really? Let's be honest, sort of thing. It feels totally weird sitting in as I am now in the office in the back of the garden, and suddenly, by magic, the sort of kind of Premier League manager appears on your screen. It feels a bit weird, but basically, he's just been fantastic. I had this perception of him, and it was largely from covering games when he was at Dortmund, once sort of PSG, but he seemed a bit moody, a bit, difficult, and sort of had this reputation, albeit very good for producing young players at Dortmund. I have to say, I think that was vastly misunderstood. He just seemed to be, always at war with someone, always looking for picking a fight. And he's just been a breath of fresh air. He's been fantastic in press conferences and sort of kind of the way.
Well, he has, but they've been winning games, Crossy.
Oh, of course.
You may see a different side to Tuchel when he has a bad run, and it will happen because that's just life.
Yeah.
But, I think you're right in that.
And it will definitely happen at Chelsea, by the way.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
There was obviously that training ground bust up, and he handled that pretty well. He's made a joke of it, and, I suppose if Chelsea had been losing games and that would have happened, it would have been an issue. But those things happen up and down the country at clubs all over the land every week, probably. I know Chelsea are obviously a massive club, but so it gets highlighted. But I thought he dealt with that pretty well, and he's been a great addition to the Premier League, to English football. But I can't wait to see the other side of him, because obviously he does have another side to him. We've all seen that before, and it will come when they lose 2 or 3 games on the spin.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It was a good...
Chelsea win the Champions League and the FA Cup, does he get Manager of the Year?
Well,
yes, to be honest. Yeah, to be honest. If you think about how it'll break down, I think he would, yeah. to be honest. I'll tell you what, while we're talking about press conferences, I think it'd be quite interesting. It's just because, Matt, you and I were there at Spurs on Sunday, weren't you? And basically, it was just Ole Gunnar Solskjaer v Jose Mourinho was really quite funny. And then basically, it's just, because Jose then had a bit of a rant. Actually, it was in response to my question, not as particularly aimed at me or my question, I hasten to add. Just when I asked about Son, just trying to get a line, basically. And a line of story, I should add. And then basically, I mean, it was classic Jose. I felt like distraction tactic, but it was, Solskjaer had said this thing about sort of kind of, if a player had gone down, or if my son had gone down on the pitch like Son, then I wouldn't feed him. Which I have to say, it was said pitch side. I think one of our colleagues was sort of kind of, wasn't he, mumbling under his face mask about something, Solskjaer saying something pitch side basically to Sky. I hadn't got the foggiest what the quote was or what the quote, the full quote or the full context of the quote, other than basically he was accusing Son of being a cheat. And so then basically, obviously, if he'd said something completely outrageous to which we knew about, we'd definitely stick it on Jose, because you'd get a better story, wouldn't you? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out that journalist puts, inflammatory quote to most excitable manager in the Premier League. I think you're going to do that. If you know about it. And it's, it was bizarre, wasn't it, afterwards? But Jose's deflection tactics, Matt, I mean, just to sort of say, I can't believe journalists not asked me about it, and I can't believe that Solskjaer, has sort of said about it. I think they did have a bit of a teet-a-teet in the tunnel afterwards when Jose stuck it on Solskjaer's toes, and Solskjaer, I don't think, didn't know quite what to do, basically. But it was a fascinating look at Jose and his deflection.
I was just out of personal interest as much as anything. I dug a little bit into the background of all this, and it's an excellent service, to be fair to them, the BBC. We all pay for it after all. They take all the quotes off the television, and when you're live at a game, sometimes that can be quite helpful. Being able to see in written, you can see all the managers lined in front of you, agonizingly too far away to hear a single word of what they're saying on all the broadcast interviews while we wait for our turn to do the final Zoom press conference. And he'd obviously said this, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer obviously said this thing, about not feeding his son if he'd made such a meal of things. And I know that Jose was pointed out those quotes off that BBC feed as he was waiting to go into his Zoom conference, and as coincidentally, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was just coming out of his main press conference. So I don't think he went looking for him, but it just so happened the two managers met, and Jose wasn't going to take that as an opportunity not to have a word with him. He'd had a word with him at half time about some of the things they were saying touchline side. So he obviously wasn't impressed with Solskjaer's behaviour throughout the game. But then in that press conference, you were told, right, final question, John Cross. And that was the fourth question of that press conference. That was all we got. So the fact that none of us really, anyone who was clued up, perhaps, wouldn't have had a chance to have asked that question. He's right. Of course, it should have been put to him. And that's Jose's beef. He sees it as an agenda against him. But then by going off on answering,
we can only put it to him if we know about it.
Exactly. But then but he decided that was an agenda, and it was something darker going on. The fact that we did know about it, but we're choosing not to ask it, which is obviously nonsense, as you'd explained. What will be our interest in that? But then, it is absolutely classic. Jose knows how the papers work. He talks about response to this, gives a few choice quotes back. Suddenly, the back pages are all about Park, and they're not about the fact that his team were woefully short of competing with Manchester United, will not be in the top four, which is what he was told to do this season, and they're in danger of imploding with top players leaving in the summer, which are what we should all be talking about. In fact, ironically, the one fight he did choose to pick, he's a very interesting man, because I looked into it. It's a really good documentary. It had fairly low launch back in January, called Sensational on Prime Video. his dad's a very interesting character, and I can't believe Sonny's never been sent to bed without his dinner before. So even his argument that his dad was a better man than Ollie's doesn't seem to have been a particularly clever one. But then we're all still talking about this a week later, and not talking about what we should be perhaps talking about, or what Jose doesn't want us to talk about, which is he's absolutely failed to do what he was brought in to do, which is get Spurs in the top 4. And unless he has a remarkable run in, which Spurs don't look capable of at the moment, that's something that Levy should be thinking about a lot more carefully than poor Heung-min Son getting his supper tonight. It's classic Jose, and he had a bit of a point about not being asked about it, but he knows what he's doing, and he knew that by raising this, he was hiding a lot brushing a lot under the carpet that he really didn't want to be talking about.
Yeah, no.
Were you ever sent to bed without your dinner, Dunny?
Often enough, Crossy.
I'm just worried about Solskjaer's children, to be honest. This isn't the first time he's threatened that he wouldn't feed them. So I think he said it earlier in the season as well. So
did he?
Yeah, it was another incident where he said an opposition player, if his son did that, he wouldn't feed him. So something going on in the Solskjaer household, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's parenting.
It's a massive few weeks, isn't it, for Tottenham when you think about it, because
they could, going to say it's a massive few weeks for Solskjaer's kids.
They could beat. I mean, it's very doubtful they're going to beat City in the League Cup final. But if they did, he's won a trophy. If he wins a trophy and doesn't get him in the top 4, where does that leave Levy in terms of what does he do?
Oh, I think we lost Jeremy there.
We've lost Jeremy there.
Yeah. Jeremy got so carried away with thinking about Spurs winning their first trophy in 13 years that basically it's all gone. I don't even think that's a conversation. I don't even think that's a conversation. Spurs, all we've heard for the last 10 years is when Spurs are going to win their next trophy. I think it's just so, if Mourinho wins the League Cup, it's his Tottenham's first trophy in 13 years. Just changed. That's only complete game changer. I know it's not enough. The Spurs want more, of course, but it's just the notion then that basically, it might still not be enough. It's just daft. They've won a trophy.
Yeah, it gives them another year, I think, doesn't it? It gives them another, or at least a start of the season, and if they start well next season, but it also gives them that coveted Europa League conference place, which will be.
Which will be key, of course, to keeping Harry Kane and keeping Harry Kane happy.
Harry Kane's dream as a kid growing up was always to play in the third tier of European football, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, I do jest about Harry Kane, but I mean, the notion that the basic Harry Kane, it has sort of kind of said, I want to leave this summer because, want to go and win things. And Daniel Levy just sort of open the door and say, "Go on, son, on you go. Good luck with that." Is just beyond parody. I think that Daniel Levy will sell Harry Kane when Daniel Levy thinks it's right for Daniel Levy to sell Harry Kane. That's the long and short of it. And if that's that this summer, then, well, I'd be surprised. But anyway, we'll see. But it will be an interesting one, really. But Arsenal, because I think Man United are through against Grenada. I think we can accept that. Arsenal playing tonight, of course. It says here on the script, written by someone else here, that maybe it's the Arsenal press officer, but basically it's Arsenal. It could be a chance to talk about another exciting youngster in Martinelli. Might not win anything now, but could be a great era for Arsenal in a year or two, which is a very, very kind of nice way of putting on nice put a spin on it, really, because it is a huge game for Arsenal and Arteta, I think. Tonight, because I mean it's make or break for their chances of getting into Europe. I think their only sort of way back in is through the Europa. Has been an underwhelming, frustrating season, sort of topped off by that sort of kind of first leg draw when they concede that the away goal very late on. Matt, you were there, weren't you? I mean, it was a typically shambolic defensive thing. I mean, I've been enthusing about sort of Arteta all season, and even I'm beginning to think, gosh, where's this going? I've no doubt it'll be getting a chance into next season, and that's the way it should be. You can't change another manager again, but clearly things need to change and improve, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. It's I mean, I've been waiting to see any sign, any metric at all that you can say Arsenal are improving. And even Arteta himself can't put his finger on it and say, he just says we're changing things at the club, blah, blah, blah. But, they're lower in the division. He's told at the season, if nothing else, get us in the Champions League because of the money. And he seems to be going hell-bent for nothing else. It's just a car crash. They're not even going to qualify for the Europa League on merit of their Premier League performances. And to think that of an Arsenal team, even post-Wenger, it's just alarming. Meanwhile, he's upset his captain. He's got rid of the most talented player and ushered him out to the wings, and off to into the sunset. And he's developed a few young players, but they were around before, and they're going to keep developing. Martinelli is another, he's not. That's hard to pinpoint much of that on what Arteta's doing. They're just good young players, a few good young players. Whether they're good enough to carry the dross that fill most of the positions in that Arsenal team, there are players who just aren't good enough to be a top four side. And when Xhaka's your main leader, you've got a problem. It's no disrespect to Xhaka. Well, some disrespect to Xhaka, but a huge amount of disrespect to the people playing alongside him. He doesn't have leaders, and it comes back to the thing that you don't need to be showing passion. Yeah, actually, you do need to show passion because sometimes you need to lift the players around you. So you could be feeling it all you like, but the senior players then need to be feeling it for those that perhaps do need a nudge. And there's none of that at Arsenal. There hasn't been for a long, long time, going back to before Wenger left. And no one seems to be addressing that. The problem's down the spine of the team. They can't defend down the middle. We're praising Guardiola for sorting that out this year. That's just the basics. You sort your centre-backs out. You get two centre-backs. We see what happens when Liverpool suddenly haven't got two centre-backs. It's basic stuff. And for Arteta to come in, have had some transfer windows and not really address that with proper players, then you just wonder, we could be tinkering around and doing lovely things on the training ground and changing the club's philosophy and all the rest of it. But the fundamentals, he doesn't seem to be making any impact on at all. And as a result, the results are going down. And, I hope he is the guy. He's a nice enough fella. You hope his pedigree. It's a shame when you just bring a manager in and then sack him. But, I think he's got to be showing dramatic signs of improvement early next season. For Arsenal to keep going that way, because they literally cannot afford to keep missing out on the Champions League.
Yeah, look, I do think it's the lack of improvement that is the worry. Look, I do want to focus on the FA Cup semi-final previews a little bit as well. We've got to listen. We've probably talked an awful lot about Chelsea, Man City, both of them individually. I think we're sort of kind of come to the conclusion that City would have to be favourites, but Chelsea are in there fighting thanks to Thomas Tuchel and, stand a chance. But let's focus on the other one. And, of course, it would be great to have some fans back, sort of as a sort of test event on Sunday. Those of us who are going subject to sort of kind of the sort of test event ourselves, we're sort of taking pre-match COVID tests, aren't we? It's along with the usual sort of, which has now become a habit, sort of the standard other sort of medical protocols. But it is an interesting one, isn't it? Because you'd have to say it's a real opportunity for Leicester or Southampton to get to the final and sort of make some progress. Leicester, what a season they're having. I realise, controversy marred their defeat at West Ham on Sunday, which maybe should even mention that really as well. But if they finish top four and reach the FA Cup final, what a remarkable season, isn't it, for Leicester and Brendan Rodgers? But I have to say, Southampton have enjoyed some pretty good highs this season as well. Some really good performances. So you can't write them off. I actually think this will be an absolute cracking game, won't it? Really, I think, Jeremy, you're there, aren't you? It's going to be a good one.
I've got to pass my test first.
Look, that should be an effort.
I suppose a lot of the spotlight this weekend will be on the City-Chelsea game on Saturday, because obviously two high-profile teams. A great showdown that should be, but we're remiss to overlook the Saints-Leicester game. Like you said, he touched on it. It should be a cracking game because actually we know Leicester are consistently capable of producing great football, great side to watch. Rodgers is doing an immense job there. And Southampton, you say the highs. They've had some highs. They've had some really low lows too. I mean, obviously they got beaten by 9 goals at United earlier this season. Leicester put 9 on them at St Mary's the season before. So yeah,
I'd never heard of that one before.
But yeah, this is a free hit for Southampton, isn't it? Yep. They've stayed up. They've hovered around sort of the lower third of the table for the last 4 or 5 months. Always looked like they were never going to get dragged into the relegation zone. So, it's a free hit for them. No one probably thinks they're going to beat Leicester. If they could get through and get to final, it'd be a great occasion for them because they don't get to many finals, obviously. But nor do Leicester, really. I mean, I know they won the title in that astonishing season a few years ago, but Leicester don't have a huge pedigree of winning trophies. So if Rodgers could somehow get through and even win the FA Cup, it would be a huge plus on his CV and just sort of add more ice to the cake of what he's building at Leicester because he's done a great job there. And I think Rodgers is destined to get another big job within the next 2 or 3 years. I can't see him staying at Leicester longer than that.
Yeah, well, he's taking Leicester places. Southampton, are they in with a chance, Matt? Do you think?
Yeah, very good chance. It's a bit of a race to the bottom for both the clubs at the minute in terms of form, isn't it? Because they've kind of dipped off the cliff since Leicester's last couple of results have made their top 4 position look a bit squeaky, and Southampton haven't been quite the force they were a little bit earlier in the season. But I think they're really up for it. I'd like Southampton to do it. Leicester have got their title. That'll always be the big deal there. 1976, you go back to for Southampton's only FA Cup win. Still talk about it now. And it is a big deal for the club. There's even talk of building a statue of Laurie McMenemy to go with Ted Bates so that they can, he was a manager back then. I asked Hazen Huddle about whether he fancied a statue if he won it, and he said no. His mate told him never get a statue built because the pigeons poo on your head, which I thought was an unexpected term for the press conference to take. But he'd probably take that chance if it meant lifting a famous trophy still. And they are the sorts of clubs that can lift a trophy. Spurs would take the FA Cup. Spurs would take any trophy, as we discussed. And if Southampton can win it, or at least get themselves into a decent, into a final against one of the country's top teams and give themselves a chance, then I think that'll be something that the people would be interested, neutrals would be interested to tune in to watch. And I know you. Do you like the FA Cup, John? You hardly ever mention it. But
did I not mention it? Yeah, did I not mention it? Yeah, I'm very excited about this weekend. I think it'll be fantastic. Actually, both
and fans back is going to be fantastic.
Fans back, I think, is the thing for me. It's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, look, I know it's a bizarre one this weekend because it's a test event. It's local residents as much as anything, isn't it? And it's but obviously we're going to proper fans almost. It feels like for the cup final, but it just feels as if it was going to be a new dawn, hopefully, and hopefully the return of fans.
Pubs reopened, and fans back in the same week. Can hardly contain my excitement.
Wow! I met someone. I actually met someone and sort of kind of ran into them almost in the pub actually because the pub's near their house really. But the other day, even though I wasn't drinking, they weren't drinking. To sit in the pub garden, socially distanced, abiding all the rules, of course. Just still felt absolutely magical. It's just amazing, absolutely amazing. So I can't wait to go back and have a proper drink. But anyway, there you go.
I've got another one for you, John. If Leicester win the FA Cup and qualify for the Champions League, and City don't win the Champions League, does Brendan Rodgers get Manager of the Year?
I think he probably does. I just think Leicester, it's amazing what they've done.
Jeremy's not impressed with that.
What if United win the Europa League and then catch City in the title race and win the title? Does Ollie get the Manager of the Year?
Yeah. Imagine how difficult that'll be for you to write, Jeremy.
Ollie out.
I don't know. It's just I think Leicester it's no longer a surprise that Leicester are in the top 4. And that is the biggest thing.
Qualify for the Champions League, though, it's still a remarkable achievement.
Absolutely, I just think it's amazing what they've done as a football club.
I think that stadium is a bit.
Sorry,
I think it's been overlooked with West Ham being in that battle with, and the fact that they blew it last year and they were in it all for so long. But for the squad that they have to be in the Champions League ahead of the clubs they're ahead of, I think it'd be a massive achievement. Look, they might still blow it. They need to turn that form around, but I think it's been overlooked because of West Ham's kind of the shock of West Ham being up there.
Yeah, absolutely astonishing.
It's good to see teams like Leicester and West Ham penetrating that so-called Big Six cabal as well, isn't it? You know, Leicester have pretty much been in the top 4 all season. I know they blew it last season, didn't they, after lockdown? They had a horrendous finish to the season and missed out. So the pressure's on, actually, for them not to do the same this season. But they deserve, up to now, they deserve to finish in the top 4.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
And Vardy's not even scoring any goals from, is he, at the minute?
He's not scoring any goals, and he's struggled for form and fitness, isn't he? He really has, you know. And he basically
and missed Maddison for a long spell with injury. I know he missed last weekend's game for different reasons, but you know that's a big miss to them. He's not played for several weeks now, so. Yeah,
it's astonishing, really. I mean, the club is brilliantly run. I think sort of kind of the stadium, brilliant new training ground.
Yeah,
absolutely going
good young players.
Places. Yeah, really, really good. Guys, anyway, let's finish on perhaps one of our and finally moments. And I'm gonna ask you guys to perhaps not take yourselves too seriously, because journalists never do that, do they? We never take ourselves at all seriously, do we? And we're always ready to laugh at ourselves. Not. But basically, the one that really made me laugh this week, and sort of kind of saw it on social media, if I'm honest, was Michelle Owen from Sky, who I have to say I think is brilliant on Soccer Saturday, and actually, you know, makes the screen light up, and she's absolutely terrific at what she does. Always has fantastic fun and banter, and a really good reporter. But she was, you know, she was basically, shall we say, she repeated Chris Kamara's greatest moment by missing a key moment in a game. Of course, you know, Chris Kamara all those years ago sort of missing a goal, didn't he? I think Michelle basically sort of kind of missing a red card in a crucial moment. And I have to say, I think there's an awful lot going on when an empty stadium, basically. Sometimes I think people sort of miss this. So basically, there's an awful lot going on with sort of deadlines, producer in your ear, and everything going on. For TV reporters, it's a totally different ball game. But I think in spirit of that, you know, I think it'd be so naive to suggest that no journalist has ever made a mistake. We're probably lucky that Andy Dunn's not here to trump out absolutely everybody. But basically, you know, guys, without taking ourselves too seriously, what is the biggest mistake that you've ever made? And perhaps, you know, have a laugh at yourselves here as I say this. Jeremy, come on, set the tone.
I'm not sure I should be telling this story, but I'm going to tell it.
Go on.
So many moons ago, turn of the century, actually, millennium, was working for a provincial paper up in Leeds. Still sort of feeling my way a bit into sports reporting back then. Anyway, the sports editor decided to send me to an England game at Wembley. And I was excited about it. So thought I'll make a weekend of this. So went down to London, arranged to meet a friend after the game, go around Covent Garden for a few cheeky beers, stayed over. So I'm sat at Wembley watching this England game, and it was a dreadful game. I'll refer to it later, which game it was. But with about 10 minutes to go, I thought, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm gonna beat the rush. I'm gonna leave early, miss the end of the game, go back to meet my pal, have a few beers. So I did, left, walked down Wembley Way, got on the tube, went into London, walked into this pub I'd arranged to meet him in. As soon as I walked in, he stood there crowded around the TV with about another dozen blokes, and he looked at me and sort of went, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean? I'm meeting you out?" And he says, "Yeah, but shouldn't you be there?" And pointed to the telly. Keegan had quit as England manager. And I was looked at the telly and just felt immediately ill, thinking, Keegan's resigned in the toilets at Wembley, and I've missed it all. I had to write sort of quite a lot of words the following morning and pretend that I'd actually been there at the press conference and I'd ducked out early. And I always think I laugh about it now, but I don't think I managed to keep it a secret from my ex-boss, but I always chuckle about it now. But for weeks on end, I was paranoid about him finding out. So yeah, what my brightest decision I ever made.
I did worry about this section, and yeah, you probably proved me right. We shouldn't have done it.
That was the. Do you remember you were at that game, weren't you, Crossy?
No, I was in Australia covering the Olympics.
Oh, were you? Yeah, it was a dread. It rained up. Were you at that game, Donny? When Didier Mann scored 1-0, Germany beat us 1-0.
Remember it? Obviously, watched it really, like you did, mate.
Yeah, it was raining all day. It was a really miserable day, and I just thought, I'm out of it. Yeah, I've not done it since, though. I hasten to add, and never will again.
A lesson, Chris.
I can't obviously match that. My problem is I've made a lot of gaffes, but I try to bury them away in my head. And then every so often something will remind me of it, and I get like a cold sweat about it. But there's been a lot, but little silly ones like even this season. Having Dominic Calvert-Lewin scoring a penalty against Tottenham when it was Gylfi Sigurdsson, and seeing that in print the next day haunted me for. It was the 5-4 game against Tottenham in the FA Cup, and I have no excuse for this because it wasn't like at the late; it was like 43rd minute. But Calvert-Lewin got fouled, and I then just for some reason had a bit of a brain fart and just assumed he'd taken the penalty, and then because then it ended up going to extra time and being bananas with our deadlines. I never checked it, and it made the paper the next day, which was a bit of a heart of mine. But that was my most recent one, I think.
You were still sat there at the end, though, at the final whistle, at least, weren't you?
Yeah, I was still there, mate. Yeah.
Very good, Matt. Matt, the man who never gets anything wrong.
Yeah, never get anything wrong. Fair play, by the way. If Michel Owen committed what was known as a cammy, then Crossy's come up with an Andy Dunn of a story to follow it up. It's good that they you can put a name to those sorts of anecdotes now. So yeah, nice Andy that, Crossy. Mine's a bit more boring. I think we always get in most trouble when we ask to do predictions. So, and staying close to home, I was flicking back through previous shows of this right back to the start of the season after the first weekend when I boldly predicted that a club in turmoil, of shambles from top to bottom, riddled with doubts and stories and infighting, that West Ham were bound to get relegated this season. And the only thing that made me feel slightly better was that John Cross afterwards saying, "Yeah, I think you're probably right." So,
did I?
Yeah, he did.
No, I did, really.
I think it was at a time when there was talk of takeovers and selling off young stars, and they just lost 2-0 to Newcastle on the opening day. So, but on that line, that pales into insignificance compared to the worst prediction I ever made, which was when I did a bit of tennis in the summer and watched Thomas Burditch in 2010 outmuscle an aging Roger Federer in the quarterfinals, and predicted that Roger Federer won his last Wimbledon, had no future in the game, would be nearly 30 next year, and had no future winning Grand Slams. And of course, he's only won 4 since, and then carried on and been world number 1 for the best part of the next decade. So I think that was probably my biggest gaffe, was writing Roger Federer's tennis obituary back in 2010.
Wow,
Crossy.
Yeah, I was gonna sort of hope that being a host would get me off the hook on this one.
No.
But no. Well, yeah, there's obviously countless, and so I always do like to have a bit of a laugh and take the mickey out of other people's misfortunes, because I know I've made so many of my own, really, and I always try and never to take life too seriously. So I'll chuck one that basically is absolutely years and years old, really, but basically shows have been going on for years, really. Well, it was 2002, on the eve of the World Cup, I had on the back page of the Daily Mirror Matt Jansen going to the World Cup, and that that's still obviously you can't get them all. But someone
an exclusive.
He probably was at the time. Although I have to say, maybe slightly what came out afterwards was sort of kind of some consolation that basically did get measured for a suit, basically, and was in a sort of a provisional squad, but ultimately he didn't go, did he? But basically, you would think he was pretty damn close, and that one basically still haunts me. Basically, that was the one.
I'm going to dig that up on the internet later.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll screenshot it to
you. So that was that's the one that sort of kind of amidst many others, I think, So
were you just before we finish? Were you at St George's Park the other year when we were stood in the corridor and Gareth Southgate was walking past us, and there was a few of us congregating outside in the corridor, and one of our ex-colleagues, who shall remain nameless, was keen to say hello to Mr. Southgate, and as Southgate walked past, he said, "Hiya, Gary." Southgate, can you remember?
No.
Were you not there? You must have been at St George's. It was one of those media days, and we were outside. Me and my ex-colleague were outside, and Southgate walked past us. And
oh my God!
My former colleague just said, "Hiya, Gary," and Southgate looked. The look on Southgate's face was like, "Who's Gary? You don't even know the proper name of the England manager."
Oh right.
What hope is there for anyone else?
No.
It was funny. You've seen the funny side of it, but that was amusing.
Yeah,
that's someone else's gaff there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're throwing in them. We could be here for a while.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've got a game tonight, so we can't do that.
Yeah. Right. There you go. Right, guys. Thanks so much for your company. Really appreciate it. We'll just edit out the last bit. Anyway, but no, thanks so much. We really appreciate it, and I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And thanks for your company. And see you same time, same place next week.